And I'm going to share screen. Let's talk about the reading portion first. Okay. Well, all right. You can see my little lightning that came in there when I took this picture, and you can tell by my room where I am that we are definitely Lightning fans, and we're super excited. Their first game will be coming back on the 29th. Fingers crossed they get to play. That's a big deal for us. The reading section is 35 minutes and you have 40 questions. So obviously you've got to work the questions less than a minute apiece. That is very, very fast. For the ACT, this is one of the sections that people struggle with if you're not a very fast reader, which everyone is not. That has no bearing on whether you're intelligent or not. So it's very difficult for me to say this is an accurate assessment of your intelligence level for sure, because the pace you work at is not always indicative of how smart you are. So we're going to have to use some strategies to work through that and get over that little hurdle of the time. It's difficult. I'll be real honest. It's difficult for me. When I worked this passage yesterday afternoon, the one we're going to work together, I did finish in 35 minutes, but I did not work every question. I had to do this theory that we're going to talk about. You've got to read very fast to be able to work all four. You know yourself. If you're a fast reader and you usually get mostly done, good for you. Then you should be good to go. Then keep on your same track and keep going. There are a number of students, probably the large number of students, that don't feel comfortable reading such a little amount and going through the questions so fast and coming up with enough accurate answers, correct accurate answers. So this is a theory that we've worked with. If you work 3 passages in 10 minutes each, and your accuracy level is pretty high, let's say you get 7 or 8 out of those, already you're set up to make, say, a 21, 24. With the scaling of that, it could come out to be a 25, maybe even a 26. Take the last 5 minutes and smartly guess, okay? What that looks like is what we've talked about before. Look back at your other sections, or your other questions within the section that you've just worked, the reading section, because the answer of the day is not the same answer in the entire test. I don't know if I clarified that before. There is an answer of the day in each section. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same answer. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. If you do that, go ahead on the last section that you didn't work, just go ahead and put, let's say that it was D today. That was the reading answers looked like you had mostly D's. So you would just go bubble in all 10 of the D's. And then you would go back and work your in-text questions, the ones that say in line 42, those things, or the vocabulary that tells you exactly where it is, or the easier ones to figure out. And we'll look at some of those. And you would go and change those answers. If you had guessed, you probably got 2 right. So now you're probably at, say, 22 to 26, 27. And then you might get more than that. You usually get at least 2 by smartly guessing. Then you would move on to do the other ones that you can. Hopefully you pick up 2, maybe 3. So then that should put you at a 26, 29, something like that. So that theory seems to work really well. If that upsets you and you can read fast and go straight through them, stay on your same thing. I certainly don't want to mess you up. But if you feel overwhelmed with the time limits, that's a good strategy. Now, with that strategy, and when you just regularly take it, you need to make sure you're very cognizant of the type of passages there are. Every single time there's going to be 4 passages with 10 questions. The first one is always going to be literary narrative or prose. Basically, that's just an interesting story. Hopefully it's interesting to you. Some of the stories on an ACT tend to be old. I'll be real honest. I mean, there might be one from 1850 in there. I've definitely seen that. 1920 is common to have them that old. They might be 1950s, or they could be in the last 15 or 20 years. but I do tend to see some older ones. So there'll be some older type language and older type things that you need to be aware of. Put yourself in that place so that you know what's going on. All right, the next one is going to be social science, which is going to be something like a social studies, right? Today's is on something, a psychology one, okay? That's the type. The third one is going to be humanities, and I've forgotten what this one in particular is on, humanities. About miniatures and when virtual trumps reality. This humanities is about a people group usually, or group of people, or a kind of people that are doing something, obviously humanities. The social science and humanities to me in particular seem kind of close. And then the last one is going to be natural science. If you're good at science, you probably are going to be good at this natural science. I personally, like I told you, I'm not the greatest at our geometry. That's just not my thing. I love algebra, do it right and left. I can do most of those without thinking a whole lot. But geometry, something about geometry just doesn't work as well for me. But when we start talking about biomes and all these organelles and all, I just sort of check out. That's not the way my particular brain works. So the way I'm going to work these passages are, I'm going to work the first, the second, and the third right in order. And then I'm going to smartly guess on that natural science. But if you're very good at science, you need to determine which other one you're not as good at. And so let's just say maybe it's the social science or the humanities. You kind of go back and forth. It's one of those. Most people do good at the first one. They do pretty well on that one. And so I would suggest you probably are going to work that one. But let's say you get to the social science one and it's just not clicking for you. And I'll be real honest, the one today that we're going to do would be one that I would have skipped. The social science that we have in here today, it was not clicking for me. You can read that first little part. I'm going to tell you how to do that. And you decide, is this working for me today or not? If it's not working for you, please move on to the next one. Save that one for the one that you want to guess on. So please watch the types there. Now, when you're working a passage, if you want to screenshot this or write it down, that would be a great idea. You want to notice the type of passage, just like we were saying. You want to read the intro. You get very little intro sometimes on an SAT, but on an ACT, you usually get a decent amount. It's not always really long, but the information they give you is very helpful. You want to take notes of dates, places, and names. If it said something was by William Shakespeare or Henry Thoreau or somebody like that, and I've definitely seen both of those, you would then know the type of passage. If it said William Shakespeare, we would already know, okay, there's going to be love, there's going to be tragedy, there's probably going to be some strange twist in there. We would kind of be set up for that. The guy who wrote Call of the Wild, his name has escaped me right now. They've used him several times, and he always writes about some person having to go up against some kind of nature battle of some kind, whether it be the weather or an animal or something like that. If you can bring in any information about that author by knowing the name, you're way better off. The dates. If it said it was 1920, then you need to remember 1920 was a totally different time. It even matters which part of 1920. 1920 was some really good times, right? 1929, 1928, and those last years, it was not good times. That was when the stock market had a problem, and then there were financial issues. So even within those 20s, you need to think about which year so that you're in tune with what would make sense. That can help you answer some questions that you wouldn't have to go look for sometimes. The places. Be aware when you have one. There have been several times when they're set. One recently I worked was in Japan, and it was in Japan in the 1940s. Okay, what do we know about Japan? They have a totally different view of older people in their community. They honor older people, right? And they are very loyal to their families. more so than people in the United States are. They are all about tradition and doing things correctly. You need to remember that, know that, think about that. So knowing where the story takes place is going to be key as well. Please do not read the whole passage. You really just don't have time for that. I'm going to show you as we do one today how to do that and not get in trouble with that. Now, having said that, if you're a very fast reader and you already have your thing going and you're able to read that all and work all these questions, you go for it. But I find very few people who are able to read the entire passage and then answer the questions. And even if you could, I would suggest you didn't do that. Still read the first paragraph-ish, go read the questions. If you want to go back and read that, the rest of the passage, that's fine. But I like to do something called working smarter, not harder, because I'm going to take each question and find out what are we really looking for here so that I can be aware of it. When I hit something that comes up in that area of questioning, that I know what I'm already looking for. Oh, let me pay a little more attention to that at this time. All right, next you're going to go to the questions themselves. You're going to underline exactly what is this question really asking me. Keep in mind, people get paid a lot of money, probably $150,000 to $200,000 to write these passages so that you can get messed up. They're paid to trick you. Did you have a question, Amberly?
No.
Oh, sorry, I thought I heard you. So just keep that in mind, that they're trying to trick you. So let's be aware of that now and outsmart them, right? Don't let them trick you. If you're able to answer the question right now, I'm going to want you to do that. I suggest you do. If it says in line 42, a word means something, absolutely we're going to answer that now. Or if it says in paragraph 3 this, or if it gives you some idea about where the questions are, or where the answers to those questions are, please go answer those now. Why not? You're already there. There's no need in coming back. That way you get a better idea of what's going on in the passage as we go along. I'm going to want you, as one of your biggest things, is please eliminate wrong answers. Just like yesterday in that English section, if you eliminate wrong, you're going to end up with more right all the time. Put your big old check, because you're not going to mark any of these in your answer key until you're finished with this entire passage. You're going to do the 10 questions with that passage, bubble those 10 in, and move on. Please make sure you do that. Most of the answers are found in order that the passage flows. Most, more so than an SAT. Now that doesn't mean they all do, and probably as sure as I said that, the one we're going to work today is not going to be that way. But let's say you were working on number 5 and it said it was in line 49. Probably 1 through 4 came before that most of the time. Now, of course, not when it says the main idea of the entire passage. That's not going to be the case. But if things don't tell you where something is, there's a good hint when you look at the numbers, the line numbers. And ACT is going to give you more line numbers than an SAT is. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to go to, let's check this first passage that you guys did on your own. All right, and I like to say we can kind of predict success by one passage. Now, of course, if this is the passage that you don't do well at, that's not a good indicator. But for the most part, if you get 7 or 8 out of 10 correct on a practice, you're probably going to be good to go, and hopefully you can continue that throughout the passages. Number 1 is D. Number 2 is G. Please put an X or a check on those. Don't mark the right answer right now. I'll give you the answer sheet later, because I'm going to want you to go back and reread those and see, why did I miss it? There's a lot of value in finding out in your own thinking, how did I miss this so I don't miss more in the future like this one? So just put an X or a check. Number 1 is D, 2 is G, 3 is D, 4 is H, 5 is A, 6 is J, 7 is B, 8 is G, 9 is C, and 10 is F. So if you will, in the chat, if you'll put how many you got right over 10, just so I get an idea about where we are. So count the number of checks you got, the number you got correct, over 10, or just tell me how many you got right. If you'll throw that in the chat. Okay. Thank you, Julian. Good, Emma. Good. Good. Okay. So it looks like we're right in there. We're about in the same area. Perfect. Yes, we all got 6 or 7. So that's actually really good, especially cold turkey not having known some of these strategies. The strategies are hopefully going to help you move yourself more onto like 7, 8, 8, 9, something like that. So that's good. That's nice to know. Let's flip to the next one, passage 2, which is the social science. And like I said, for whatever reason, different passages are going to work well with you. Others are not. So this in particular would have been one that I would have said, I'm just not sure I'm getting it, and move on. Most of the passages are going to be one passage. We're going to see passage 3 in this one. There are 2 passages. You have that every once in a while. It's almost like I can kind of predict if you have it one ACT, then you don't the next. So you need to be prepared. It would be at least a 50% chance that you're going to get 2 passages that are related, and then you have to compare the 2. More like SAT. SAT, you can almost count on getting 2, maybe even 3 of those. ACT, you may take a whole ACT and not get 1 at all. So let's just look. Exactly what I'm talking about from that sheet I was just, the tip sheet there. I'm going to read the social science, all right? I notice it's a social science. It says this passage is adapted from the tipping point, How Little Things Can Make a Big Difference by Malcolm Gladwell in 2002, okay? Let me show you how I marked mine, if you can see that. Oh, the other thing, hold on. I should have done this part. Anything I read, whenever I read, I'm going to put a little mark like that. I don't always do it on the introduction. That's why I left it off. But definitely when I read anything down here, I'm always going to mark it. Because remember, we're not reading this whole thing. So I want to make sure that I know if I read something or it sounds, oh, I think I read something about that, I know to go look where I've marked. If I have no clue, haven't heard anything about that, then I'm going to go look in an area that I haven't marked. So please do that. All right, I circled 2002. Okay, I know some of you were probably just born, babies, and all at that time period, but that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Yes, a lot has changed in that period of time, but if you take a step back, okay, we had cell phones then for sure. We had internet for sure. There was social media. It wasn't near as big as it is now. So things have changed some, but not if you consider going back just even another 20 years. If you go back to 1980, that was the MTV period. People watch cable TV. There were three major news stations, and then we were just starting to get others like CNN came about and things like that. There definitely was no social media. We had computers, yes, but we did not have the internet, not in the way it is now. There were certain places that they had something similar, database type thing. It was not like instant communications, right? So that's why I say 2002 is fairly recent, even though it may feel ancient to you. Consider that. Life was not that different then. If it were the 50s, it would be a time when each family probably had one television in their home, not the 5 or 6 we all have now. The family had one car. Usually the mother stayed home. The father went to work. Everybody waited. Nobody could go anywhere until the dad got home with the car. Mom had to borrow the car from dad to go grocery shopping. Obviously, that's not the kind of times we live in now. So as ancient as it sounds, I'm going to call this fairly current. All right, now I'm going to read, if you notice, the paragraph is not that long. And this is just a personal preference. You'll sort of pick it up and get going with this. I'm going to read enough of that paragraph, so that I can get lay of the land. I need to know the gist of what's going on. Sometimes you're going to encounter a paragraph, this happens often, that maybe the first paragraph is like the whole first column here. I don't want to read all that. I'm just going to read what I need to read to know what's going on. All right, there's a concept in cognitive psychology called, if anything is ever defined, underline it. They're telling you what something is here. So I underline this, channel capacity, which refers to, and I'm underlining, the amount of space in our brain for certain kinds of information, okay? I probably am going to be asked or need to know that information. If they defined it in my introduction, it's probably important. Suppose, for example, I played for you a number of musical notes at random and asked you to identify each one with a number. If I played you a really low tone, you would call it 1. And if I played you a medium tone, you would call it 2, and a high tone. Okay, I'm starting to get the gist here. I might read a little faster or skip, but then I say, here it says the purpose of the test. Okay, here's another point. They're telling you the purpose of this test of channel capacity, that's probably important to me. So I'm going to underline the purpose of the test, just so I can come back and find it really easy when I need to, is to find out how long you can continue to distinguish among different tones. Most people can divide tones into only about 6 different categories before they begin to make mistakes or start lumping different tones into that same category. All right, I might stop there, but I personally kept going. When I worked this one yesterday, I kept going because I thought, oh, there's only a little left. Let me go ahead. This is remarkably consistent, a remarkably consistent finding. If, for example, I played you 5 very high-pitched tones, you would be able to tell them apart. And if I played you 5 very low pitches, you would be able to tell them apart. You'd think then if I combined those high and low tones and played them for you all at once, you would be able to divide them into 10 categories. But you won't be able to, okay? When it says but, that tells me something's different, so I'm just going to underline that but there. I even underlined you won't be able to. Chances are you will be stuck at about 6 categories. I underlined 6. So they're saying we can only hold 6 different pieces of information in comparison to music in our brains at a time. That gets flubbed up in our mind after that. All right, so my paragraph looks like this. I put my long mark there because I did end up reading the whole thing. Many times I'll stop halfway, and I could have today, but it just, okay, I'm still trying to get it. But now I have, okay, here's their theory, and I know where they're kind of going with that. I'm going to go to my questions. Look at number 11. Which of the following statements best describes? What have we heard from that? Absolutely nothing. Of course, which of these describe? Those words mean absolutely nothing. What's it really asking you? The organizational structure. Underline organizational structure. I'm just flubbing up on that. All right, that's really what that question is asking you, right? Can I answer that now? No, not really, especially if I glance down and see the author describes, the author, okay, the author presents, okay, I'm not ready for that. I only know the first paragraph. I'm going to skip that question. I'm going to go to number 12. Based on the passage, which of the following statements best captures the central idea behind? Now I'm looking for a central idea. I underline that. Behind, now I'm not looking for the reasoning. I'm looking for the reasoning behind, right? The concept of channel capacity. Well, I have it defined, right? It's the amount of space in our brain for certain kinds of information. Okay, so what comes from behind that? All right, I probably am not ready to answer that, except that lo and behold, if you look down, it has line numbers. So I'm absolutely going to answer that one. It actually even gives you the lines. You don't even need to read the rest. I mean, you don't have to go find all those. So I'm going to read these. There is a concept in cognitive psychology called channel capacity. Is that the central idea behind? No, that's just saying there is one. That's your throwaway answer. For the most part, you're going to have 4 answers, okay? One is your throwaway. One is in the passage, but has nothing to do with what's being asked. That's why it's so important for us to identify what's it really asking us. All right, so we can eliminate that one. Then you're down to 2 answers. Probably both answers are going to be correct, at least mostly correct, but you've got to figure the best answer, and that's what we're trying to do. So think of it that way. You're just eliminating down. All right, so the second one, G, this is a remarkably consistent finding. Would that be the central idea behind it? No. That would be details of it, not the central idea behind it. All right, as human beings, we can only handle so much information at once. Is that a central idea behind the amount of space in our brain for certain kinds of information is limited? Yes, okay, so that's a possibility. That's something behind it could be. But if you think about it, we clearly have a channel capacity for feelings as well. Are we talking about feelings at all? No. So we eliminate. While we may not have loved H, it's the only one that makes sense. So now I have done just like this. I eliminated and I literally struck through. Please take the extra half a second there to strike through. Your brain continues to read those lines unless you strike through them. That tells your brain, it's a brain marker. Don't read that, it's not important. Even though you've already, maybe you just mark out the letters, it's not the same. Your brain is still trying to think that way. When you start a question, your brain is going, oh my gosh, I've got 4 choices. I don't know what to do. You eliminate one and your blood pressure goes down. Your stress level goes down a bit. All right, then we eliminate 2 and your stress level goes down even more and your confidence goes up. Picking between 2 choices, sometimes they're very close and it does feel very stressful. It's still way better than trying to pick from 4. So this is another way that I try to say, I'm in control of this test. This test is not in control of me. All right, the other reason why we put that big old check is because we're skipping, right? Let's flip over and look at the next page. According to the passage, which of the following is a theory? Okay, according to the passage, duh. Which of the following, duh, we don't even really need to read those words, but we read them, but we just don't, they're not what it's really asking. The following is a theory about evolution of the brain size in primates that is supported by some scientists, but not by Dunbar. Okay, there's something that is supported. I circle that word. Something that is supported by some scientists. I circle scientists, not by Dunbar. Okay, we don't even know who Dunbar is at this point, but we know how to find it because we're going to go look for Dunbar's name and we're going to go look for primates. But am I going to do that now? No, I'm going to continue through the passage and go to get all the answers I can correct first time through. But now I know if I hit something about Dunbar and primates, I can go back and answer that one. Looking at 14, moving on. The main idea of the last paragraph. Now be careful with this. It is only in the last paragraph. If you are asked to just give the main idea of the passage, the best way to do that is to read or remember what's in the first paragraph, which you mostly have read, and then so you may have to go read the last. The main idea of the passage, remember when you write a paper, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, my body is going to tell you, and then I'm going to, in my conclusion, I'm going to tell you what I told you. So your first and your last paragraphs should tell you what your main ideas are. This particular one is asking us for the last paragraph, okay? It's fairly long. I know I'm going to read it, so I go ahead and I mark it, right? And then I'm going to go read it. I'm searching for the main idea. Usually people get messed up with main idea because they pick details. Main idea is the overreaching idea, not the little detail things. Dunbar's argument is that brains evolve and they get bigger. Okay, there's our Dunbar guy. I might even underline his name. And they get bigger in order to handle the complexities of larger social groups. If you belong to a group of 5 people, Dunbar points out, you have to keep track of 10 separate relationships, your relationships with the 4 others in your cycle, and the 6 other two-way relationships between the others. That is what it means to know everyone in your circle. You have to understand that you have to understand the personal dynamics of the group. If you belong to a group of 20 people, however, and there are now 190 two-way relationships to keep track of, 19 involving yourself and 171 involving the rest of the group. Even a relatively small size in just a group like this creates significant additional social and intellectual burden. Humans socialize in the largest groups of all primates because we are the only animals with brains large enough to handle the complexities of that social arrangement. Okay, what did we just hear? People's brains grow when they're pushed, when they're required to, and that the more relationships you have, the bigger your group, the more relationships you have, not just with those people, but keeping up with everybody. Okay, I kind of have a little idea there. So now I'm going to go back and look at my answer choices. Brains evolve. As brains evolve, they decrease in size. Is that what we heard about? No. Dunbar has gone to great lengths to try to prove his argument. Did we hear anything about proof in that? No. Literally strike it out. I didn't hear scientific proof in that. Remember, this is an academic paper. To say something is proved means there had to be facts. The neocortex is the part of the brain responsible for tracking social relationships. Did we even hear the word neocortex? No, we did not. This is going to be an easy one. Let's hope and pray that J is correct. Humans have the largest brains of all primates because humans socialize in the largest groups. Is that what we heard? Absolutely. Circle it big and put your big old check, just like I did. All right, then we're moving on. The passage defines a sympathy group most specifically as, so what are you looking for? Sympathy group, I underline that, and defines. Okay, that will be an easy one to find because we're going to go back and just look for sympathy group when we're going back. We're not going to do it now because that's not the most efficient way to work. I'm moving on. Number 16, which of the following statements best describes how the author views Dunbar's theory? Okay, now we do know Dunbar's theory, and we heard his view there at the end, one of them, of social channel capacity. I don't know at this point. Yesterday, I didn't work it, but now having read it again today, I might at least look at it. He is intrigued. Underline the word intrigued. Okay, and if you look, he believes. Underline the word believes. Look for verbs. I'm eliminating. I'm not reading all the rest of this. He is unsure. He believes. Okay, here's 2 believes. So let's see what the differences are. He believes the argument is problematic. I would underline that. Or he believes it is indisputable. Okay, so right off the bat, I picked my words that are going to help me, and I'm not reading all that other. What do I know for sure? Is the author unsure? No, the author is, I didn't hear that. I've read the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and it told me what Dunbar thought. If he was unsure about it, he would have put a line in there and said, but I'm not sure that I believe this, right? So I can take H out right off the bat. Is he intrigued? Could be. He believes that Dunbar's argument is problematic. Did we hear that he didn't agree with it? No. Did we hear that his argument is indisputable and that supporting research is inexhaustive? No, we heard this guy saying what this theory was, and he didn't say that he disbelieved. So off the bat, all I've really read is the first and last paragraphs, but I know that he's intrigued. And well, I don't know that he's intrigued as much as I know he does not think it's unsure or problematic or indisputable. Those words, absolutely take that one out. I have now answered this one, right? I have answered 1, 2, 3 questions, and I've looked at 1, 2, 3 others. I'm doing teacher talk. If you were doing this, you'd probably be at about minute 6, something like that at this point. Your brain thinks much faster than I can talk, even though I know I talk fast. But your brain is going to go much faster than this when you're doing it. As long as you use that tool, you've got that pencil that day, make sure you use that tool to help you guide through the thinking. All right, let's look at number 7. Based on the passage, the assertion, okay, I'm going to underline assertion because what does that mean? It means they're presenting this as a proven and an accepted thing, right? That primates have the largest brains. Okay, we heard that in the last paragraph, so I might can answer. Of all animals, is presented as, oh, okay, let's look down. A fact, don't read the rest, just a fact, an opinion, or an opinion. Well, off the bat, do I think it's an opinion or a fact? The guy just gave his reasoning, so I'm going to take my 2 opinions out, and I didn't even have to read those. So then I'm going to read my 2 that say fact. The fact that serves as the author's main point in the passage, we just said it was the main point over here, so that's definitely a possibility. All right, a fact that serves for the basis of Dunbar's argument. Ooh, wait a minute. So is the main point that primates have the largest brains, or that, like in the opening, we have the largest brains because of? I'm not sure on that. I'm kind of iffy between A and B, but at least I've narrowed it down. When I did this yesterday, I was left with A and B. I came back. All right, then we go to the ones I love. This particular one only had 1. Usually you get at least 2 of the vocabulary. They are putting less with each test. I do see that. You used to have 3 or 4. But the ones that have vocabulary, and how do I know it's vocabulary? Because it's very short. When you see anything like this, the first thing I want you to do is cover up those answers. Please do not read those answers. I promise it will mess you up. As is used in line 56, underline 56, the word sophisticated most nearly means, do not look at those answer choices. Always put your finger. Go to line 56, and it says, it's up at the top. It's at the end of a sentence, but I'm going to read it as it is. Brains evolved because our primate ancestors began to enlarge or engage in more sophisticated food gathering. Instead of just eating grasses and leaves, they began eating fruit, which takes more power of thinking. Okay, so sophisticated, what does that mean? I'm going to come up with a word I could put there if I took out the word sophisticated. And the one I wrote, and I literally write a word, I commit to something. I said highly skilled. Okay, that's what I thought of as sophisticated, because they're not talking about, ooh, she's a very sophisticated person. She's very intelligent. She walks like she's got it going on. That's kind of, let's say, Melania Trump. I'm just going to use that. I know a lot of people don't like her, but nobody disagrees that she's very sophisticated, right? She has a worldly air about her. She is a good definition of sophisticated. Is that what we're talking about here about food? No, we're talking about highly skilled. All right, I have my answer already in my brain, then I'm going to go match it. So see, here's the perfect example. If you had not gone to read this, or if you had looked at those words, you would have put worldly, probably, because that's what sophisticated means in most cases, in many cases. The difficult part is not the word itself, but it's how it's used. It has multiple meanings more, similar to the SAT. That's what I see ACT go into, is more double meaning things. So it's not worldly, but many people get that wrong. I've done this passage before and people guess sophisticated, worldly, boom, move on. Be careful with that. Complex. What does complex mean? More sophisticated. That's the word that comes. So I'm trying to find another one. More complex means more complicated, more detailed. more honed in. Okay, that's kind of what I said on highly skilled. So I'm going to put a little dot beside there. More cultured. No, that would have been the other answer that people would have put. Cultured is not what we're talking about here. Genteel. Now, some of you may not even know that word. It's a word that you don't hear as much anymore. It's one of those things you would read that in a passage written in 1950 or 1920. Genteel is very kind, quiet, gentle. Comes from the word genteel, gentle. All right, so it's not that. It is complex, and move on. Now, that one in particular, you probably could have done in 30 seconds. It took me a little longer because I talked through it, but please use this process. You got your big old check and you move on. According to the passage, one reason, all right, I'm going to underline one reason. Some scientists believe that animals uses more brain power. That's why I kept on reading, because I knew I'd read it somewhere, and I think it was because I read it yesterday. Sorry about that. Believe an animal uses more brain power to eat fruits than it does to eat leaves because, hey, didn't we just read that? All right, let's just look back quickly. And it says, because which takes more thinking power. All right, they eat, okay, instead of eating just grasses and leaves, they began eating fruit, which takes more thinking power. It takes more thinking power to eat fruit. Now let's go find the answer. Let's see, are smaller, let me see exactly. One reason some scientists believe animal uses more brain power to eat fruits. Oh, we don't know why. We don't know why. It says it reads more pain. So let's just keep reading right there. If we know where it is, you travel much further to find the fruit leaves that you would be able to create mental maps. You have to worry about ripeness. You have to peel the parts. Okay, it's more complicated. That's what I'm hearing. So let's go back and see. Because fruits are smaller than leaves. Are fruits smaller than leaves? Fruits are not smaller than leaves. Leaves are thin little papers, right? So there's your incorrect statement. Throw it out. Because fruits cannot be eaten by all animals, unlike leaves. Did we hear anything about that? No. Maybe shouldn't be eaten by all, but that doesn't mean that they cannot be. Cannot, any definitive term, always, never, cannot, must, those kinds of words. Be careful with those. It's very definitive language. It's difficult for those statements to be made. The statement, I am always on time, is a lie, because I'm not always on time. I am almost always on time. I rarely am late. And if I'm ever late, 9 times, well, I'll say 1 time out of 1,000, when I'm late, it's my fault. Usually it's my husband. My husband, if you want to be somewhere at 5 o'clock, you got to tell him you got to leave at 4:30. And then he's kind of ready by maybe 10 till 5. I don't know why that is. It just is. I am just very, very punctual, but I still cannot make the statement, I am always on time, because either something might happen in my life to make me not be on time, or my husband may be going with me, and that's almost always going to make me a few minutes late. So watch out for that definitive language. It's difficult for that to be true. They offer more nutrition than most leaves. Did we hear that? No. So I might get a little nervous and read down a little more to see if it says anything about nutrition there. And it does not. So while that could be a possibility, and when I did this yesterday, I did leave it in, are not easily accessible as leaves. Okay, they said you have to travel further, you have to work harder at it. Yes. Which one do I like best, C or D? I like D. And I'll move on. Now, the last one. Based on the passage, which of the following statements is, if true, would most likely weaken Dunbar's theory? Now, remember Dunbar's theory is, right? Some primates with relatively small neocortexes socialize. Okay, wait a minute. I don't know where this one is. I'm going to need to read more about it. I can't answer that one right now. But so I'm going to look at it. Primates primates with relatively small neocortexes. The human brain is continuing to evolve. I'm just going to eliminate. What am I looking for? Except for humans, apes have the largest brains. Mountain gorillas live in groups that average 9. Okay, the last one I know is the throwaway. That cannot mess up his theory. If groups of mountain gorillas live in groups of 9, cannot change his science. Science has to be applied across the board. So that's my throwaway answer. J comes out no matter what. All right, now you say, oh my gosh, miss, I'm not done. What am I going to do? You're going to work backwards. That's the best way I know to do. I can't answer number 20, but I'm most likely going to hit some information to go along with that. I'm going to jump back up to 17, and I'm going to see. Now, the reason I know to do that is because I've got my big old checks, and I can jump at them easy. Based on the passage, and I don't have to read that anymore because I've underlined, the assertion that primates have the largest brains of all mammals is presented as fact or the main point, basically. The basis for his argument, okay, now I'm a little more sure because I've read more. I'm going to go that it serves as B, a fact, because this is not serving for the main point. That is not the main point of our passage. I was a little unsure about that A anyway, but now I'm more sure that B is correct. I pick B and move on. All right, 15, it defines sympathy group as, okay, all we got to do is go look for the word sympathy group. I am not reading, I'm just perusing. If someone finds it, tell me what line. We don't have that much we haven't read. Sympathy group. There's the neocortex. When I saw that word down in the last paragraph, I'm underlining it. Okay, right off the bat, I'm not finding it, but that's a perfect thing. I probably have just skipped over it, but that's okay. That's going to happen when you take the test. Skip the question, go on to the next one. If you don't hit it after the next one, you'll come back. All right, then number 13, supported that some scientists, but not believe the primates, okay? I'm gonna let us, these are ones that are gonna take a little longer, and I see we're running out of time. That one is one you're gonna have to spend a minute to look at, but if we've spent, say, 30 seconds on 5 or 6 others, we've got a minute to spend. If you look back at number 11 now, which of the following statements best describes the organizational structure? We can definitely do that one now. The author describes a psychological concept. Okay, we did hear a psychological concept, all right, and then explores the aspects of the concept. Okay, that definitely happened. Let's look at the next one. The author presents theories about psychological concept. He did not present a theory. He stated it as facts. So the theories in B, I don't like that, so I take it out. The author provides chronologically a development of psychological concept. This was not in chronological order. We didn't hear in 1922 this happened, 1925 this happened, right? The author presented a problem from the field. Did we hear a problem in the beginning? No. So that one became pretty easy for us. That one is A. All right, without doing those ones that are going to take an extra minute that I don't think we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions I've gotten. Probably I'm at 8 minutes now. If I spend a minute on each of these others to find the correct answers, which you can do more effectively on your own when you're really looking for it, I'm sure I just looked right over those words, they will pop out at you. You'll read that little section and you'll move on. If you look at your paper, we really only read a small amount of this, right? What we marked was this introduction, the conclusion, and this part right here. We didn't read anything else. So if like where we can't find, it's right here. I'm just looking over it this morning, okay? It's easy to jump back and go find those. Let's flip for a second because I did want to show you. I'll let you finish that. I will post the reading answer key along with this same Zoom that we're doing on the Google Classroom. I'll do that after we finish. But I want you to flip over and look at the passage 3. This is the one I'm telling you that's going to be a little different. Passage A is adapted from the essay On Miniatures by Leah Perpona, I don't know her, in 2008. Yay, fairly current. Passage B is adapted from the article When Virtual Trumps Reality, the prayer book of Claude de France by James Garner. Okay, I know there's an actor, James Garner, and it makes me think, did he write a book too? But if you notice, well, one says, I think actually one says 6 and one says 8, doesn't it? So they're within 2 years. All right, this one gets a little tricky in that you're going to have to compare the two. So what I usually suggest is read the beginning of one, the first paragraph-ish, and then go to the next one and read the first paragraph-ish. So you see the two general ideas, and then go to the questions and work them exactly the same. You may need to make little notes more to remember which point or underline which points, which usually it's an issue that, you know, one side supports abortion and one side does not. And where do the two meet? Well, this has an idea of this has an idea. It's usually clear enough of an issue for you to tell the difference, but just spend a little extra time with those. If that's one that you think, oh my gosh, that's going to blow my mind and it's just not going to work for me, then that's the one you skip. Okay, that's why I say, personally, I would have saved the science to skip. But when I get to these, if I enjoy or I'm kind of into whatever they're talking about in the two passages, I don't mind those. But I have some students who the two passages just throw them off tremendously. That's the one you come back to. There are definitely ones that say inline this and inline that. You can go back and figure just those. Smartly guess when you get to the end. When they say 5 minutes, you go smartly guess whatever you haven't done. And then go back and pull the ones that you can and change those particular answers. I think everybody, yep, all right. I'm going to end us today, but I will send you the answer key to the reading in just a few minutes. I'll actually text it. That I know you guys like that easier, so you don't have to go in and sign. And then I will send you the Zoom later on today, the Zoom info for tomorrow. Do I have any questions? The reading section, I'm going to tell you, is the harder for a lot of people because it's so incredibly fast. But if you feel in control and you go answer the ones that you need to do and just do what's in front of you at the time, you'll be fine. I think before a couple other people got on, I have heard from one student that Alonzo has canceled their ACT. I got a text or an email from ACT confirming me giving ACT at Gaither yesterday at 4 o'clock. So as far as I know, Gaither is still on, and somebody already shared Sickles is still on. So you may want to make sure you stay in touch. Want to go online and just look at go to the ACT testing centers. Just go to act.org, click on testing centers, and just make sure everything is good to go. I'm not sure what happened with Alonzo. I don't know if it was the only one. There could be others. But as far as I know, Gaither is still on. Have a great day and good luck. See you tomorrow for the science. Bye, guys.